Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is. Listen, this guy's great. You don't want to be interrupted, all right? Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Leslie.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leslie. I'm an alcoholic. I'm also a recovering crystal methamphetamine addict. Woo! And just a little sober floating head tonight. You can barely see me. I want to thank Jason for asking me to share. I've been in love with Jason for 10 years. I know he's straight. I know he has this beautiful blonde wife. And what, you're on your 10th, 11th child now? Yeah, this like rabbits. But we must live with hope in our hearts. And I'll tell you something that very odd that happened. He asked me, we bumped into each other at Starbucks. And my BlackBerry is just an old-fashioned little book that opens. And he said, could you share? And I opened my book, and it said, I'm a goddamn liar. I'm not sober. Now, and you've just been asked to share. I had, and this cannot be the thrust of my share because it'll open up a fucking can of worms. And I did it the other day, and it has to do with just getting outside help. I have 16 years of sobriety. During my sobriety, I got this career that involves some stand-up comedy work, and I do probably 45 venues a year. And I've gotten to where my big venues are like cruises, from Barcelona. I changed time zones, and I had a really rough kind of go this summer where I went Barcelona, Casablanca, New York, San Luis Obispo, LA, San Luis. Anyway, I woke up and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I went to I drove myself to the Screen Actors Guild, and after 4 hours of every test known to man, they have this one where you can actually watch your heart. And I thought, that poor little thing, what I've put that thing through with all of that crystal meth. And it just seemed so fragile. And I thought, life, just this tiny little boom, boom, boom. And the guy said to me, Mr. Jordan, you have a very strong valve, and which... Why is that funny? You have a very strong valve, which means more than likely there's no blockages anywhere, and you are not having a heart attack. It's nervous exhaustion, and it's a panic attack. Full blown. Now, I want to publicly apologize. For 15 years, I have sat in these rooms and listened to people talk about panic attacks, listen to people talk about depression, and I'm thinking to myself, buck up. Jesus Christ, what a pussy. What a pussy. But anyway, I would think, you know what, you got these 12 steps, start working. Listen, it is, once it's happened, I've had the worst year of my life. And what happens is I can have a little too much iced tea. I feel that anxiousness, and in my mind, I can't even get on the airplane. And I can't explain it. People say, well, what do you think's going to happen? And I say, I'm going to freak out. Well, what's freak out? Pull your clothes off, claw your face. I don't know. So they wanted to put me on Xanax, and They wanted to put me on Xanax, and they wanted to put me on Ambien to sleep, and la. And I had to say, you know, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Prescription pills were part of my trouble, and I'm going to do this thing on my own. And it happened twice in an airport. And I went back to the doctor, and I said, you know, I read the book very carefully. I talked to my sponsor, and I said, I need some help. And that's what I'm apologizing about, you know. It's very clear, newcomer, in our book. Very clear, you know. And outside help. And so they said to me, we're going to put you on Xanax, but we're going to give you, and he showed me what a bar was. And I thought, God, I used to gobble those. And he said, I'm going to give you a pill. It would take 8 to equal a bar. And I thought, fuck. How about just a bar? How about a blue bar? But anyway, I know my PhD, my physician desk reference. I got in an airport, and he said to me, he said, listen, this is as needed, okay? Mr. Jordan, don't come back in 30 days. I'm going to give you 30, but don't come back in 30 days. Don't come back in 60 days. I'll know you're abusing them. This is as needed. And everything within my body wanted to scream, as needed? I'm a fucking addict. As needed is every fucking hour of every fucking day. What do you mean, as needed? But I did really well, you know. But now let me tell you what I know, and see, I got to shut up about this because it's not my story. This is just the pre-story. Xanax has what's called a half-life, as does most drugs. You swallow a Xanax, and it's amazing. You know, it is an amazing drug. I mean, really, it goes away 24 hours later as the Xanax begins to leave. I know a kick. I've had to kick Xanax in the past, and it's worse than heroin. I tell you, a kick. I know a kick. And after I've taken one, 24 hours later, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, and if I can get through that, I'm fine. But what's the first thing you want to do is take another one. And I finally, you know, just went to them and I said, and then they gave me this Ambien, and I got on a boat, and Ambien, listen, I know blackout drinking. Ambien, I woke up, I took an Ambien, and I woke up and I thought, wow, man, I slept. I walked in the bathroom in my bathing suit. I went swimming. Not only did I go swimming, I turned on the lights and it looked like a raccoon had been in there. I had gone to the midnight buffet and brought it all back down. I called my friend Peter. I said, listen, dude, they fly me places. You know, I got 16 years sobriety. Did I seem fucked up? What have I done? I didn't do anything more than the doctor. He said, well, you were really funny at the leather party. This was a gay cruise, by the way. Then I took my mother. She couldn't even tell. She said, these boys are so sweet. But anyway, the point being, newcomer, panic attacks are horrid. Panic attacks are horrid. Depression is horrid, you know. I will say that at 5 years of sobriety, I went to the doctor. I was in a fetal position on the bathroom floor over a newcomer. And my nurse practitioner, who I adore, said, I want to try this antidepressant. And I said, no. And she said, would you at least try it? The gray cloud that has followed me my entire life, I'm gregarious, I'm outgoing, but there is something, I thought the gray cloud was my homosexuality. No. You know, anyway, forget all, let's start the pitch. You know, I love the change. This to me is sobriety. I have to tell you, Rodeo, when I started coming, newcomer, we share normally about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. But this Rodeo Drive was like what we wore, what happened, and what we wear now. I mean, this when the original Rodeo Drive was every movie star you have ever seen. Anyway, it's this I like. This seems to be manageable, you know. I know that there's been this fraction, and I've spoken at both, and that's the hipsters. And you know what? I like what Joni Mitchell says. Hip is a herd mentality, man, you know, and this one thinks they're hip, and oh, get lost. If you're, you know, go over it, you bore the shit out of me. All you can talk about is what's hip and what's happening. I left New York City because of that. I really did. Because everybody was in the know. And everybody had been to the party. And everybody, you know, and it was like, fuck this. But anyway, I'm going to start now. What it was like, I only have one story, and it's my favorite story. I can sum it up pretty quickly. I'm a kid. I'm 58 years old, plus tax and deposit. No, I'm 58 years old. I'm closer to my authentic self than I have ever been. I am close. Who I am, what I am, is it's just amazing, and it's about this program. I came into this program with a lot of shame. I had been using for years and years and years, and you took away my medicine. And as my first sponsor said, "You're a fag-hating fag." And I said, no, I do not hate gay men. I don't particularly care for the really effeminate ones. He said, hello? So I had been fucked up so long I had forgotten I was a sissy. But anyway, who knew? But my favorite using story, I was a product of the 60s, you know. I just wanted, 14 years old, hills of Tennessee, and San Francisco was where it was at, you know. The Haight-Ashbury, and all my idols were rock stars that are dead of the disease of alcoholism, all from your Janis Joplins to your Jim Morrisons to all of them, you know. Those were my idols, and all I wanted to do was be a hippie. I wanted to live on the streets of San Francisco, and I grew my hair. I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I looked sort of like a rock and roll troll doll. You know, I had all this hair. And the 70s kind of rolled into a lot of, I did a lot of LSD, unlike our friend. I did a lot of LSD. I did a lot of psychedelics, and we called it MDA. I think it's called ecstasy or Molly's now. It has to be the same. I'm desperate to try it. But anyway, I have a friend who told me what a Molly was, and I said, I think we called that MDA, you know. But anyway, and then the 70s rolled around, and it was Quaaludes and disco and Studio 54, and, you know, I was staggering around on Elton John platform shoes. I love that. When you're 4'11", you know, you get to wear those. And then the 80s was making a little bit of money, you know, and then the 90s rolled around and it was just crystal meth in my bedroom. And as our friend shared, afraid to go down the hall, peeing in a glass jar because of my own home. Afraid to go down the hall because you never know. I mean, you know, you never know. I was the curtain monitor for 10 years, and it was an important job, trust me. My friend would say to me, get off that goddamn curtain. I'd say, you pull things apart. Put the VCR back together and I'll stay away from the curtain. But people, you never knew. You just never knew. And I could not get away. I would say to myself, you live in the valley. Your drug dealer's not after you. Why can't you just have a good tweak? And the minute boom. For 10 fucking years, I had shifts, you know. But here's the best story. Here is the story, and I hesitate because this is primarily I'll tell you, growth in this program is, I used to have my gay pitch, and then I had my straight pitch, and now it's I don't give a shit, This is a very gay story, but it's very funny. I used to love to drink at this restaurant called the Café des Trois. And it's still there. It's on Santa Monica Boulevard near Robertson. And to our detractors, they call it the Café des Twat because it's a bunch of kind of old, fussy queens. But it was a little better than what's the one down the street? Anyway, I knew them all. I drank my way all the way down. And I would drink, all day long at the Café des Twat. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, if I'm going to make happy hour, I got to get out of this alcoholic fog. And so I had decided I would score a little speed, and that'd get me out of that alcoholic fog, and then I could make happy hour. And so I went and scored a little, crystal meth, and you know how classy we are. I found a public restroom, and we cut it, on the back of the toilet. So I don't know what this speed had in it, but it was like I was plugged in. And I came roaring out of that bathroom, completely wired. Now here's the funny thing about what I love to say to the gay community. Back in my day, if you wanted to get laid, you had to act butch. No one wanted a sissy, which doesn't make a bit of sense. We're gay, we're sissies, But even today, you can call your gay friend, and this is what you'll get on the answering machine. Hello, my name. It's like, who the fuck is that? Hello, my name is Brian, and I live. But anyway, I had this. I came walking out of this bar, and I was just like this. And there were these two evil queens. It used to smoke in bars, and these two evil queens were, and I could hear every word they said. And I came out of the bathroom, and when I was a little boy, but I had a big mustache like Ron Jeremy. I looked just like a porn star. I had this great big old mustache, and I would wear cowboy boots. And I had this like black leather jacket that had fringe on it. And I would walk, I had this kind of walk. It was kind of like, you kind of, it wasn't a sissy walk. It was whatever walk I had come up with, because I would practice in front of the mirror because I was so ashamed of the way I walked. But anyway, I come walking out of that bathroom like John Wayne, and I hear these two queens, one of them go, well, here she comes, the drug-crazed sex dwarf. And I could hear them. Now, here's the sick part of the story. I remember thinking, I kind of like that, Perhaps you've heard of me. I'm known around these parts as the drug-crazed sex dwarf. But anyway, let's don't get into the drunkalogue. You know what it was and where it led. And it led to, like I said, the curtain monitor. And it led to, and then I made the decision at about 40, because when I would do crystal meth, I had begun by then, and this was a big source of my shame, was a line that I thought I would never cross. I had begun to do it intravenously. And I knew I was going to die. And I was able to stop the crystal, but what I was not able to do was stop the drinking. And I got 5 arrests in 1 year. One of my arrests, 152 Pod A, Cell 13. Robert Downey was the top bunk, and I was the bottom. But anyway, I love that our friend right here, I love that our friend mentioned the 12 noon meeting at Moore Park, because that's where I got sober. This would have been almost 16 years ago, and I don't know how I got there because my driver's license had been taken away. And I was living in Northridge, and I do know because I've looked that there is a bus you can catch all the way from Balboa to Sunset. You can catch it all the way to Hollywood. So somehow I got to this place. My entire life, I have been ashamed of the way I sound. I open my mouth and 50 yards of purple chiffon come out. I mean, and I have been, the first time, I was in 4th grade, and my mother bought me a tape recorder because I was going to memorize a poem, and I had never heard my voice. And I pushed, and I said, gather round children, and you shall hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere. And then I pushed play, and this is what came out. Gather round children, and you shall... I thought, oh my God, I sound like a fucking girl. I mean, I sound exactly, I had so much shame about that. Now, newcomer, what's interesting is that we are able in this program to take our defects and turn them into assets. 58. I just miss words. Assets. And here I am in Hollywood making a goddamn fortune the way I sound. I do cartoons. I do voiceover. I'll do anything, you know. A lot of no, really, I'm the biggest whore in Hollywood. $100 a day in a square meal, and you've got me. But that's one example of turning something that we were so deeply ashamed of as a child into something that we can call an asset. And I show up at this meeting, and it was a straight meeting, and I love the way newcomers show up with their armor. A lot of times it's motorcycle jackets and, this or that, I had a fishing hat on. I don't fish. I don't know where it came from. And I had a big yellow slicker. It hadn't rained in weeks. And I had these rubber boots on. And anyway, I sat down, and near the end of the meeting, they said, would our newcomer like to share? Now, here's something interesting for our new friends. I'm an actor by trade and a performer by trade, and so I couldn't speak one-on-one. It was the weirdest thing. If you had come up to me one-on-one, I couldn't speak. Crystal methamphetamine had rendered me mute. I couldn't put thoughts together. My synapses were not firing correctly. But my acting training kicked in, and I was able to speak on a group level. Now, as I finished my talk, I had a lot of shame because I'd gone to jail, and that wasn't part of my family's story, I wasn't raised to be a liar. I wasn't raised to be a cheat. I wasn't raised to be sexually promiscuous. I wasn't raised to be sexually perverted, whatever that is. I love that term we use here. We have a term, newcomer, that we call our sexual misconduct. And I think that's so fucking polite. I mean, when you've been up 6 days on crystal meth, it's just some real sick shit. But if you want to call it my sexual misconduct. But I had a lot of shame around my sexual misconduct. And anyway, I finished my share, and they called on Mikey. Now, if there could ever be a human being that was the opposite of Leslie Jordan, it would have been Mikey. He was this big guy. He was from Brooklyn. He grew up tough. He grew up on the streets. He was straight, And he ended up many, many, many months later telling my story. It was the weird. He talked about how we're the broken toys. That there's so many of us that have just been tossed away. And here we all are. And we're just the broken toys. And we're trying our best, Anyway, he told my story. But on this particular day, they called, said, would Mikey like to wrap it up? And Mikey said to the young lady who just got out of jail, well, that was me. Well, I don't know what the source of your shame is. You know what I mean? I don't know if you grew up poor. I don't know if you grew up heavy. I don't know if I don't know what the very source. We all have a source of shame. And my shame is that I am an effeminate man. And there's just not a whole lot I can do about it. You know, I fell out of the womb. I landed in my mother's high heels. And I have, with all due disrespect to the Christian right, there ain't no choice here, okay? And I had a dad who was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. And he would come home with his Army buddies, and I would be twirling. I was a real good baton twirler. And my mother was a champion. And my dad would come home with all his Army buddies, and I would say, "Daddy, watch me twirl. Daddy." And my dad used to call me son as if he was in deep pain. You know, he would just he would say, "Oh, son." He would say, "Son, why don't you twirl in the house?" I'd say, "Mama's scared I'm gonna break something." He would say, "Son, I will pay for whatever you break if you will please." And you know, my dad, I didn't really mean to go into my dad, but my dad is a big part of my story. My dad died in a horrible plane crash when I was 11 years old, which is an awful time for a boy to lose his dad. And I knew to the core of my being that my daddy had gone to his grave ashamed to have a son like me. And I lived with that shame, you know, all my life. I lived with that shame. Now, I have to tell you, I'm newly sober, and my sponsor asked me to do a fourth step. And I want to tell new people, we do these steps, and I think it takes a long time for just the clarity to happen. I'll tell you, I had shot crystal meth for so long that it had embedded itself. I hate to tell this to anybody new, but I was 3 years sober, and I got a very deep tissue massage one day, and something came loose, and I walked out of there tweaking. I called my sponsor, and I said, "I'm tweaking." He said, "Leslie, it's feelings coming up." I said, "No, it's not. I'm high. I know fucking high. It ain't no goddamn feelings coming up. Something has happened, and I'm high." And do you know, 3 days, I wrote it out just like, you know what it's like. You've been up 6 days, and everybody else wants to go to, you know, you're the one begging everybody to go to Pacoima. I was the one, please. We can put on our sunglasses. They're like, "Go to bed." No, let's go to Pacoima. Let's keep it going. But after 3 days, that shit left my system. And that was my final hurrah. And I don't want to scare any newcomer, but I was 3 years sober. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is we do our best. Your first fourth step, in which we make a searching and moral inventory of oneself, is probably not going to be that good. You know, it's a school assignment. It's just something you've got to do. Just list the things that that bothered you. See, what we're trying to do is get rid of that shit that we carried from childhood. You know, we just hauled it. We hauled it, and we hauled it, and we hauled it, and we brought it out. And listen, newcomer, the war is over, and honey, you lost. So all of that shit that served you in the war will no longer serve you. And that's what we try to look up with our fourth. Now, it wasn't until I got about 5 years sober that I was able to do a pretty thorough fourth step, you know. But my very first fourth step, my sponsor, who was so wise, by the way, he was a straight guy, and I had to give him my sexual inventory. And I thought, my God. And I started, and I kept going, and I looked over, and the motherfucker was asleep. He told me later on, he said, there's just so many holes, and there's just so many ways in which we can fill those holes, and I have heard it all. And then he told me the hilarious story about Serenity Sam. You may have heard this story before. It's a little off color. It's real off color. There was a young man who Serenity Sam said to him, you've told me all your secrets. Now tell me the one you've never told anybody. And this guy looked down, and with tears in his eyes, he said, I fucked a chicken. This is a true story. Serenity Sam said, and was serious, did yours die? Meaning that there's nothing that you've done that we all, haven't heard. And, this is where you bring it and tell us all. But, I hope your chicken didn't die. I really do. But anyway, this guy, after my fourth step, he said, Mr. Jordan, your biggest fear in life is heterosexual men. And I said, thank you. I said, this is so fucking beautiful. And look how red he is. But you know what? Anyway. He said to me, your greatest fear is heterosexual men. And I said, no shit. It wasn't exactly a picnic on the playground. I don't know if you remember dodgeball, but, smear the queer. I was tormented. My mother called last week and said, they're having your 40th reunion. I said, and I'm going to fly in and show up and tell them to kiss my rich ass. That's what I'm going to do. But here's the problem. I'm not rich. But they don't know that. They think everybody in Hollywood's rich. So anyway, he said to me, your fear is heterosexual men. And I highly suggest that you join an all-stag, a men's stag. And I have to tell you, that was the scariest thought. I thought I was going to just shit and fall back in it. I mean, for a little sissy like me to walk into a room filled with heterosexual men. I had, and guys, I'm not lying, I thought straight men had no fear and no shame. I really did. I thought that the fags, we're the ones with the fear and the shame. Ladies, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but anyway, the heterosexual man is a minefield of shame and fear, and they're scared of women. I thought, oh, please. I'm not scared of women, but I was scared of heterosexual men. I went, he even told me what meeting to go to. He said, go. I said, I want to go to one in West Hollywood. He said, no, you have no fear of those men. You're going to go across Laurel Canyon, and you're going to go to Radford Hall on a Monday night. I walked into that room, and there were 100 of the butchest men. They don't sing Happy Birthday like we did tonight. They get in a huddle. Is that it? The huddle. And they go like this. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, ooh. And I walked in with my man purse, with my Merce. And I'll tell you what's funny. My very first thought was, oh my God, I should have left my bag in the car. As if that was the only thing that was going to give me away. Had I left my bag in the car, none would have been the wiser. Well, we sat And it was one of these meetings that is a podium share. Now, newcomers, it's frightening, but it's a wonderful way. It's a baptism by fire. And even if you get up here and say, my name is so-and-so, and I don't have a lot to say, but thank you, and you sit down, you will float out of here on a cloud. I don't know what it is. But we went around the room to introduce ourselves, and I used to have this trick. Southern guys, you see it a lot on hillbilly hand fishing, and that's where I'm from. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm about an hour above Honey Boo Boo. That's where I'm from. Seriously. Honey Boo Boo child. But anyway, that's where I'm from. I'm from the deep South, and I think it has to do with tobacco, because there's this way they all talk, and I used to try to emulate it, because, they don't move their mouth at all, their lips don't move. And so they got around to me, and I said, my name is Leslie, and I'm an But, honey, they were on to me, they were on to me. And we got to the end of the meeting, and I'll be goddamned if that speaker didn't say, would our new friend like to share for us? We have time for one. Would you like to come up? Now, in my gay meeting, I had heard a hilarious story. There was this guy that was a big sissy. I mean, he made me look like a Hell's Angel. This was a sissy. And he told this story that I thought was hilarious. His sponsor said to him, I want you to find a straight meeting, and I want you to get up, and I want you to share. And the day that it was supposed to happen, he was so scared. He called his sponsor, and he said, do you think I should tell him I'm gay just right off the bat? And his sponsor said, honey, you got to walk to the podium. They're going to know. And so I must have strutted like John Wayne, and I got up to the podium, and it was something very cathartic happened. I have about 3 minutes, so let me speed it up. I looked out over this sea of men, heterosexual men. It was my daddy and all of his army buddies. It was every kid that ever teased me. It was, and I knew that this was the jumping off point. I bet I was maybe 6 months sober. But I thought, this is it. And I took a very deep breath, and I said, my name is Leslie, and I am an alcoholic. I'm also a recovering crystal methamphetamine addict. But there's something much more important that I feel the need to say out loud for my sobriety, and that is that I am a homosexual. And there was just this deep silence, and I just forged on. And I said, I'm scared to death of you men. I'm scared. My daddy was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He was killed in a plane crash when I was 11, and I have spent my entire life feeling that I don't measure up. And I'm afraid you're going to laugh at me behind my back. I'm afraid you're going to make fun of me. But most importantly, I'm afraid you're going to snub me. But this is my surrender. The unconditional love that I received from those 100 heterosexual men was over. I sort of became the meeting mascot, they thought they were so liberal because they were over in the valley. They loved to say, we got a queer. We got we got a queer. I was the queer, the meeting queer. But do you know we took retreats? Now here, I got to wrap this up because I'm over time, but real fast. Without me asking, these men, these 100 heterosexual, sober men began to teach me what it means to be a man. I had no idea. It's almost like I'd been in a holding pattern since I was 11 years old and my daddy's plane went down. Is there anybody that can step up to the plate, that can teach me, that can show me what it means to be a man? I had this very mistaken idea. It had something to do with how far you could throw a football, how many women you've bedded, how much weight you could lift. You know, things I'll go to my grave a dismal failure at. It was so simple what those men taught me. They said a man, a true man, has a code in which he lives his life by. And they introduced me to the 12 steps. And they said, young man, if you will remain true to your code, you are a man. Now, I wasn't looking for that on, October 20th, 1997, when I came in here, tore up, the floor up, But to get that kind of, I'm authentic. I'm myself. And that newcomer is what this program is. The drinking, the not drinking part, I really hate to tell you this, but that's the easy part. It's learning how on a daily basis to apply this code to your life and live a happy life. If I can't be happy, I might as well go drink. But I have been blessed beyond. I won an Emmy. I just had to get that in. Just thought I'd fucking get that in. I won a goddamn Emmy. And it was for a show called Will and Grace that was a homo hoedown. And I go places. I was in London and they were hollering my name like I was Madonna. And I thought, to have come from where I came from, am I bragging? You're goddamn right. Can I, real quick, I'll wrap with this. Can I promise each of you stick with us and you'll win an Emmy? No. But you know what? Here's what I heard and here's what I hung on to. I can promise you, newcomer, I can promise you that the desire to do drugs and to drink alcohol will be lifted. And I can promise you that you can get a daily reprieve, but it's contingent upon some kind of spiritual maintenance, which we've wide open. Honey, I've been baptized 14 times. Every time that preacher would say, come forward, lost sinner, I'd think, ooh, I was out in the woods with that boy, I better go get baptized. It never took. It never took. You allowed me a God of my own understanding. And you gave me a God who loves me unconditionally, a God who looks down with fatherly pride upon his handiwork, and he rejoices that I am who I am, what I am. And I thank y'all. I love y'all so much, and thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.